The night Clara May gave birth, the barn was the only shelter she had left. Rain hammered against the tin roof, the cold creeping through the wide cracks in the walls. She pressed her back to a mound of hay bales, clutching her swollen belly as a contraction ripped through her. No midwife, no family, no kind neighbor with warm water and clean sheets. Just her, and God. But God hadn't spoken much to Clara lately. She bit down on her lower lip, tasting blood, fighting the scream rising in her throat. If one of the ranch hands heard her, questions would follow, and she had hidden her shame for 9 long months. They'd cast her out of Miller Ranch in a heartbeat, and then what? She pushed, teeth clenched, tears streaking her dirty cheeks. Finally, a thin, sharp cry filled the air. Clara gasped out a sob of relief. A boy, tiny, red-faced, but strong enough to wail. She wrapped him in an old quilt she had saved for this night. But the pain didn't stop. Her stomach clenched again. She knew what that meant. Another child. The second birth was harder, longer, crueler. Clara screamed into the straw until her throat burned. And then, at last, another cry, a girl this time, softer but just as insistent. 2 babies, twins. She laid back, hair plastered to her forehead, chest heaving. Her eyes filled with tears as she looked down at them. 1 boy, 1 girl. Their tiny fists curled in the air, seeking warmth. Eli, she whispered to the boy. Then, brushing a finger along the girl's cheek, Emma. Her heart ached with a love so fierce it terrified her. And beneath that love lived fear. Because their father didn't know. Luke Granger, the cowboy boss, owner of half the land in this county, was long gone, called to Texas for business. He had been her employer, a man of wealth and stature, yet he'd shown her unexpected kindness when she first came looking for work. She'd been desperate, a poor girl without a home, and he'd hired her to sweep out the stables and feed the chickens. He'd given her suppers when she looked too thin, and one summer night under a silver moon, his kindness had blurred into something more. And then he'd left. Now, Clara rocked the twins in her arms, exhaustion sinking into her bones. How could she raise 2 babies alone? How could she keep them safe when she had no family, no money, no roof beyond the barn rafters? But she swore, in that moment, she'd try. The weeks crawled by. Clara nursed them in secret, tucking them beneath quilts when she worked outside. She begged scraps from the kitchen, telling the cook she was hungrier than usual, and saved every crumb for milk. Nights in the barn were long and cold, the twins' cries echoing in the rafters, but she sang them lullabies her mother once sang to her, songs about rivers and stars. The ranch hands grew suspicious, but no one pressed too hard. Clara had always been quiet, keeping to herself. As long as she did her chores, no one paid much mind. But hiding twins was like trying to hide the sunrise. They grew louder, their tiny voices carrying into the night. Clara feared discovery every hour. Still, she endured. Then one dawn in late autumn, everything changed. Luke Granger returned. He rode into Miller Ranch just as the horizon blushed pink, his horse lathered from the long journey. Dust clung to his boots, and a weary shadow sat heavy on his face. He hadn't meant to stay away so long, nearly a year, but life had a way of dragging a man down roads he didn't plan to take. And the truth he never spoke aloud was that leaving Clara had been easier than staying. He thought of her often, though. Her quiet strength, the way she laughed softly when she thought no one listened. He had convinced himself she'd be better off without him. She was just a poor girl, and he a man burdened with land, debt, and duty. Affection had been weakness. Best to leave it behind. Or so he told himself. Luke dismounted, stretching sore muscles. He was about to head toward the ranch house when he heard it, a sound that made him freeze. A baby's cry. Frowning, Luke followed the sound to the barn. He pushed open the heavy doors and stepped inside. What he saw stopped his breath. Clara May sat in the straw, her back against a hay bale, cradling not 1 but 2 infants. Her head jerked up, fear flashing in her eyes as their gazes met. Clara, his voice cracked. She held the babies closer, as though shielding them from him. You shouldn't be here. Luke stepped forward, his heart pounding. The boy's eyes, storm gray like his own, stared back at him. The girl had his chin, sharp and stubborn. The truth hit him harder than a bull's kick. They're mine, he whispered. Clara's lips trembled, tears spilling. Yours, and mine. I didn't know how to tell you. Luke staggered to his knees in the hay. He touched the edge of one quilt, reverent, not daring to reach further. Clara May, You did this alone. You gave birth here, in this barn, she admitted, voice breaking. I had nothing, Luke. No family, no one to turn to. But I couldn't give them up. They're all I have. Shame seared through him. While he'd been chasing cattle contracts and land deeds, she had been here, alone, fighting through pain and hunger, raising his children in silence. I should have been here, he said, voice rough. God help me, I should have never left you like that. Clara's chin lifted, defiant even as tears shone in her eyes. Don't say words you don't mean. They need more than empty promises. Luke reached for her hand, his grip firm, steady. Then let me prove it. Let me be their father. Let me be yours, if you'll let me. She searched his face, her heart warring with itself. She had dreamed of this moment, of him returning, of him claiming them, but dreams and reality were never the same. Could she trust him? Could she forgive the months of silence, the loneliness, the barn nights when she thought she might die from the weight of it all? Her gaze fell to Eli, then Emma. They deserved more than a barn. They deserved a family. Finally, Clara whispered, if you're staying, truly staying, then maybe there's a chance. Luke's lips curved into a trembling smile. I'm not going anywhere, Clara May. Not again. Tears blurred her vision as she let him pull her close. For the first time in months, she let herself lean against someone else's strength. The twins stirred between them, their tiny cries softening into calm. Luke pressed his forehead to hers. We'll build them a home. You'll never sleep in a barn again. I swear it. And for once, Clara believed him. The barn that had been her place of suffering became, in that moment, the place where her life turned. Together, they stepped out into the rising sun, Clara, Luke, Eli, and Emma. A poor girl no longer. A cowboy boss redeemed, and a family found at last. The barn wasn't meant for living things smaller than calves and colts, but for 9 long months, Clara May had no other place to call home. The hayloft had been her bed, the drafty stalls her only shelter from the prairie winds. She worked where she could on Miller Ranch, sweeping, feeding chickens, scrubbing laundry, and most nights she crept back to the barn with a crust of bread tucked in her apron. But that autumn night, the barn became something else entirely, her birthing room. Clara pressed her back against a bale of hay, her hands clutching her belly as another contraction ripped through her. She was only 18, too young and too poor to face this alone, but alone she was. She bit back a scream, knowing if any ranch hand heard, questions would follow. Questions she wasn't ready to answer. With one final push, a cry split the air. A boy. Tears blurred her eyes as she wrapped him in the old quilt she'd saved for this moment. But the pain wasn't finished with her. Another contraction, harder than the first. Clara gasped, fear sweeping through her. Minutes later, another cry echoed against the rafters. A girl this time, smaller but strong. Clara collapsed back, hair damp with sweat, chest heaving. Twins. Eli, she whispered, kissing the boy's head. And Emma. She brushed her lips to the girl's cheek. 2 names for 2 tiny miracles. But miracles were heavy to carry alone. The father of these children, Luke Granger, the cowboy boss himself, was gone. He'd left months ago for business in Texas, never knowing what grew inside Clara's belly. He had been kind to her once, kind enough that her heart forgot its place. Then one summer night under the wide Texas stars, kindness blurred into something more. A month later, she knew she carried more than memory of him. Shame had sealed her lips. Who would believe her, a poor orphan girl with no family, no dowry, no place in this world? Who would believe she carried the boss's child? And now, looking at Eli's storm gray eyes and Emma's sharp little chin, Clara knew the truth was written plain on their faces. She rocked them close, whispering lullabies to keep herself from weeping. The weeks crawled by, and the barn became a nursery. She nursed them under the smell of hay, hid them beneath quilts when she worked. She begged scraps of milk and bread from the kitchen, claiming she was hungrier than usual. The cook only raised her brow but didn't question. Nights were the hardest. When the wind howled through the cracks in the barn walls, Clara wrapped the twins close and whispered, "Mama's here." Always. But sometimes, alone in the dark, she wondered how long she could keep that promise. Part 2. The Cowboy's Return. Luke Granger rode into the Miller Ranch one chilly dawn, the horizon blushing pink behind him. His horse was lathered from the long ride, and dust clung to his boots. He hadn't meant to stay away so long, nearly a year, but work had a way of swallowing a man whole. Or maybe it wasn't just work. Maybe it was easier to keep moving than face the memory of a girl with soft eyes and a voice like honey. Clara May. Luke had thought of her more often than he dared admit. He'd told himself she deserved better than a man bound to his ranch, his debts, and his duty. Best to leave her behind, though it had torn at him. He was heading toward the ranch house when he froze. A baby's cry. The sound seemed out of place on Miller Ranch. Frowning, Luke followed it to the barn. He pushed the doors open, and what he saw stopped his breath cold. Clara May sat in the straw, cradling not one but two infants. Her head snapped up, fear blazing in her eyes. Clara. His voice cracked. She clutched the babies tighter. You shouldn't be here. Luke stepped forward, his chest pounding. The boy's eyes, his eyes, stared back at him. The girl's chin was his own. The truth hit him like a kick from a wild horse. They're mine, he whispered. Clara's tears spilled. Yours. And mine. I didn't know how to tell you. Luke dropped to his knees, guilt twisting in his gut. You gave birth here. Alone. In the barn, she said softly, her voice trembling. I had nothing else. No one else. But I couldn't leave them. Shame and awe warred in him. While he had been chasing cattle contracts and land disputes, Clara had borne the weight of his children, suffered in silence, raised them in secret. I should have been here, Luke rasped. God help me, I should never have left. Clara shook her head. Don't say things you can't mean. They need more than words, Luke. They need more than broken promises. He reached for her hand. Steady now. Then let me prove it. Let me be their father. Let me be yours, if you'll let me. Her gaze searched his, pain and longing tangled together. Could she trust him? Could she forgive the loneliness, the nights she thought she wouldn't survive? Her eyes fell to Eli, then Emma. They deserved more than a barn. They deserved a family. Finally, Clara whispered, if you're staying, truly staying, then maybe there's hope. Luke's smile trembled, but it was real. I'm not going anywhere, Clara May. Not again. Tears blurred her eyes as he pulled her close, the twins safe between them. For the first time in months, Clara let herself believe in something brighter than survival. The barn that had been her place of shame and struggle became, in that moment, the place where hope returned. Together, they stepped out into the morning sun. A poor girl no longer. A cowboy boss redeemed, and a family finally found.